Welcome to another Tecsys in Conversation. In this interview, we're going to be talking with Vito Calabretta. He is the Senior Vice President of Global Operations at Tecsys, and alongside his colleague Mark Hawksley, who's the Vice President of Project Architecture and Delivery. We're going to get their advice on what an organization should consider before starting their supply chain digital transformation journey. Any SaaS-powered implementation project requires proper planning, so I'm going to be asking Vito and Mark some key questions to help you avoid common obstacles and guide your strategic plans to success. Welcome, Vito. Welcome, Mark. So guys, thank you for joining me. And what I'd like to do today is ask you a few questions, and then just feel free to kind of jump in and have a dialogue about this topic. Both of you are experts in the whole process of taking an organization through that digital transformation towards an implementation of some kind of technology. And it's an area that is, I hate to say it, fraught with danger, fraught with risk. And so let's start out with what are some key factors in the successful implementation of a digital transformation project? Vito, do you want to kick us off?
Well, the most important thing in a successful digital implementation, I would say, is, know what you're doing and manage well what you're doing. So, it starts with scope and plan and having a good plan of what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and then stick to it. The biggest challenge with any project is you get going into a certain scope, and as you're doing the project, you realize it's bigger, and then you start changing too much, and you don't stick to the essence of what you were supposed to do from the first in the first place.
Mark, we've seen this before in projects where people aren't fixing the problems that are real problems; they're fixing other problems. How do you get that scope? Like, what's the best practice for defining that scope to even stick to?
Well, I think you've got to know, in terms of your business goals, where you're going, how that aligns with your IT strategy, why you're embarking on the program, and don't try to simply replicate what you do today. Adopt the best practices of the software that's coming in, and as Vito said, make sure that you have a clear scope, you stick to it, you have strong leadership and governance that help you stay on that plan and stay on that scope, and I think that will be one of the keys to the success.
So when we look at these kind of digital transformation projects, many times customers fall short in their expectations, whether it's expectations of how much they need to put into the project, how much resources are going to be there, what it's going to take to execute, timeline, anything like that. Any kind of pointers for an organization that's trying to plan this process out to try and understand the scope, the expectation of a project like this?
I think for me, it's recognizing that this will be a big project. It will be a large undertaking, and to be successful, of course, you want your best people. So plan to staff this with the right team. Bring in the best people who understand your business today. Try to backfill for them in their current job, I suppose, and just make sure that they've got, if you like, the right time. You've got the right people. And they've got the bandwidth to actually kind of deliver the project. So set the right team up with the right size to start with, but also have a longer term goal in terms of what happens after the project is finished. How do we do that ongoing maintenance of the solution? How do we make sure that the people can support it and they adopt it? So build the team so that they can transition into that role as well.
Yeah, and what I would add to that is think of also getting the right expertise. When you do these digital transformation projects, you usually get a software, you sometimes need an integrator. You need people who've done this before and have the expertise and the proven experience of having done it. So bring the right amount of expert to work alongside your people so that you can take ownership and transition and learn as you do the project. And the other thing is, remember that when you're going to bring these experts, you got to listen to them. It's very difficult sometimes to say, okay, I'm going to not only bring the expert in, but I want to do what I want to do. Well, the expert has done it before. They have a way of doing it. They have a proven approach. Listen to that also as you put it in, because it can be very valuable.
So how do you go through the process of actually selecting that partner? Are there any key pointers to do you align on culture? Do you align on geography? What do you recommend as regards, other than just that they've done it before? Are there any other things that you'd suggest you look for in a partner when you're thinking about doing a big project like this?
Defining your requirements, the level of detail where you can explain to the partner that you're looking for that this is the outcome you want. These are the processes you want to put in place. This is what the system needs to do, and this is what the solution needs to build. Being very clear with your requirements is fundamental to understanding that you're picking somebody that can meet them. If you pick an example in construction, if you want a painter to paint your house, but you're describing plumbing requirements, well, you're going to get a plumber if you describe plumbing requirements. So you got to pick the right language to find the right partner and describe your requirements to the level of detail. You'll get people to be able to answer. Then when they'll pitch to you, they will have understood your requirements, and they'll explain to you how they do this. And then it will bring up to, well, where have they done it before? And who are their reference? And where have they done a project that's very similar to what you want to do? And once you've picked the right partner with the right references and the right experience that are similar to what you want to do, you typically get the right answer. Geography can be something that matters, but a lot of work can be done remotely today. So be careful, of putting too much emphasis on something that may not matter.
Yeah. I think as well, when you're choosing a partner, you also have to sort of recognize your own kind of strengths and weaknesses. So, you don't need a partner to do everything. You can certainly take on a lot of the responsibility. But a partner can be someone who's bringing the software, the solution, an integrator, a niche player who's providing a certain kind of service. So I think choosing the right balance as well in terms of the partner. But I think for me, the key thing as well is whoever you're partnering with, don't forget this is your project, and you should be the one leading and driving and so on as much as possible.
Good point. So risk. We've gone into these projects. We know risk is a big factor. If you're a customer getting into a digital transformation project, how would you go about mitigating risk? How would you go about reducing as much risk as possible? Is it all just about doing your homework, or are there other things outside of the stuff you've already described where you write down all the things you need to update, you need to change and everything else?
Well, there's the classic risks, will you have enough resources? Will you have the right resource? Will anything happen that will delay you? Are other projects going to conflict with your project? So there are some standard risks that we see on every project that happen. I think the biggest thing with risks is recognizing that they exist, identifying them early, and then monitoring if they're about to happen or not, and what are your mitigation plans. The other thing is having enough contingency, either money or resources or time to be able to allow you to mitigate for these risks. Because the reality is they're going to happen. Something's going to happen to you that you haven't planned for. And if you're planning for perfection, then you're guaranteed to fail, because it's not going to happen. Something's going to happen to you. What you should plan 100% certainty is something's going to derail your project. You're going to have to manage with it and keep going and get the project done.
These projects are complex, and as Vito said, issues will happen. So plan for them, be realistic that they will happen, plan in enough contingency. But I think on top of that, you need strong governance and leadership, where when these things happen, you can escalate them to the right level quickly, and you can get an answer and you can move on. You need leadership who can keep the project on track, stay to the objectives and goals, and sort of manage through those risks and mitigate them sort of, quickly.
Yeah, I really like the idea that you were saying is plan for problems, but don't let them become disasters. Get them headed off while they still are just a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and when you see a risk, call it out. It's not going to go away. The longer you leave it, it will only sort of get worse. So call it out quickly and deal with it straight away.
So there's an elephant in the room, and I'm going to address it. There's cost. The cost of these projects. So we often hear, so what's it going to cost? Now, I'm not saying we can give a customer or a prospect or anybody a specific cost about their project, because it's their project, it's unique. But How can a customer about to embark on a project like this get an idea of the likely cost? And the most important thing is understand what they can do themselves to reduce that cost. Or conversely, understand what it is that they're going to decide, the decisions they're going to make, which is going to change the factors associated in a cost like a project like this. So anything you've got to say about that?
I think for me, a lot of that comes back to what we've already said in terms of be very clear on the requirements up front, make sure that your scope is clear, have strong leadership to stay on that track, and don't veer off it. If you start going away from generic solutions and start modifying solutions, that's going to cost additional time and effort. And I think also, quite often a lot of the cost overruns are a project that goes longer than it should have done. So have very strong sort of program management and project management, stay on top of the activities week by week, and just, make sure that you're sort of containing the scope from a timeline perspective, as well as a sort of functionality perspective.
Yeah, we start with a very detailed estimating model, and I find that most people keep estimates sometimes at a too high level. When if you have a proven solution and you have a proven approach to done it, and you've done it before, exactly. And Mark runs a great estimating model for what we do, but what is important is that estimating model also reflects not just the cost of the software and the integrator, but also you as the customer and the work you have to do, and understand how those assumptions, what are the assumptions that are behind that estimating model. Is there a quantity of deliverables that need to be produced, and they're set, a set of processes that's going to be done, a number of users that need to be trained, and the elapsed time that is assumed in the estimating model to be able to do this. Some clients work with plans and costs is driven by the fact that, okay, we can do testing in 2 weeks. Some clients can't do testing in 2 weeks, and they need 8 weeks to do the same exercise of testing. Well, the elapse is going to impact the cost, even though it sounds like, well, it's the effort that defines the cost, but elapsed time drives a lot of the cost of a project and is the toughest thing to estimate. Are you the kind of client who can implement a project in 6 months, or are you the kind of client that needs 12 months to do the same project? And that is very important to estimate up front. But a good estimating model can help you work with a partner to understand what are the assumptions that are being made. What work does the client do versus what work does the integrator and the software provider do? And then if everybody understands their role, the time frame, and the work that they have to do, then we can stick to a cost that makes sense and that is part of the estimate and doesn't change during the project.
I think another way as well there, Vito mentions the way we estimate our projects. We try to also identify the client work. And a way to sort of contain and keep a lid on the costs is to make sure that from a client perspective, you own your tasks, you deliver them on time with quality as well. It goes back to what we said about having strong leadership and the right team. But, projects like ours, for example, rely heavily on complete, accurate data. And so if you're putting a team on that, make sure that it is delivered cleanly and accurately, because if it's not, then the rework that can cause will also start to have an impact on the timeline and the cost of the project.
That's a great point. The work is the work. It all has to get done. Someone's going to do it. If you don't take it, then they're going to take it, and it's going to affect the cost. That's a great point. Okay, we've had some great insights, a really nice introduction to how you take a major digital transformation project and some of the factors involved. If you've got one thing to say to someone at that C-level who's trying to decide, should I be doing it this year or should I be doing it next year? What's that one thing you should say to that person who's thinking this through?
I'd go with, the sooner you start, the sooner you get done, the sooner you get value. So, you still need to plan properly and get things done and wait for the right solution to be out there for you. But, starting sooner, what was the proverb? The early bird gets the worm. So, the one you start early, you get the results sooner.
Yeah. And I think as I mentioned, if you have, make sure that your business objective is clear, that you know what your success criteria is, you stay on that path, you get that time to value, you start to realize the benefit, and do the things we've mentioned to sort of get that project in on time, and start to realise the benefits that you expected.
That's great stuff. I mean, the whole point behind this thing is there's a reason you're doing this project. You're looking for benefit. You're expecting getting to get your money back and then start making money on the fact that you're implementing a project like this. So, like you say, pick the right partner, make the right plans, and then go for it. I think that's the best way of saying it. Vito, Mark, thank you so much for your insights today. This has been a very informative Tecsys in Conversation interview. And thank you to our viewers. If you guys need support transforming your supply chain, Tecsys provides cloud-native digital solutions and supplemental talent to enterprise organizations looking to take their operation from good to great. Ensure your supply chain digital transformation is a success and speak to one of our strategic experts today.